Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions,
common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is KK, first name Kaitlyn, but she prefers to go by KK. She's a plant biologist and host of the Flora Funga Podcast. We talk about the superpowers of fungi, all the amazing things they can do, and how they may be able to help us overcome the damage we've been doing to the planet with all our activities. So,
yes,
welcome.
Thank you.
KK.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Well, tell me a bit about your background. How did you first get interested in fungi?
Yeah, great question. I really started being the plant person. So a lot of people know me as the mushroom person right now, but really I got into it with plants. So I went to school for plant biology. Didn't really know that I wanted to do plants, but when I was younger, I would love going to the greenhouses, collecting all these little succulents and growing my own plants at home, gardening. A lot of people maybe grow up with that. And then, when I went to school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do like biochem, but that was crazy. That's way above my pay grade at this point. So I did a prereq class of plant biology, and for some reason it just really clicked. Like, I loved the professor. He was really friendly. So Dr. Rulin, thank you for, showing me my true passions. And then, everything just kind of clicked. The anatomy, how plants work, plant physiology is really what I was interested in. But I recently, going to get my plant biology degree, I did a lot of projects, and I found that mushrooms were very connected. I learned about mushrooms from my grandparents' yard. I found this huge amanita, which is the red and white one, the toadstool that most people know about. And then I was like, what is this big mushroom? Like, I had no idea really what it was. And if you don't know who Paul Stamets is, he's kind of like mushroom guru, like top mushroom person at the time. I actually was just at Telluride Mushroom Festival, and I met him and did an interview with him. So I'm really excited about that. But he released a book called Mycelium Running, and for my birthday, my mom gifted it to me, and I dove into it and wanted to learn how you grow your own mushrooms, how they can save the planet, because he did a whole TED Talk on that. And then I studied abroad in New Zealand. So I took a month and was planting and, rehabilitating the land there, planting some seeds, collecting them, cutting down invasive species. But for a credit, I had to teach a class of some sort. And so I decided to do a whole workshop on how mushrooms, are important. And so I led this kind of workshop, collected all these mushrooms. We had some good time identifying them. And I really got people passionate about what I was interested in. In the beginning, people didn't really know what mushrooms were. They didn't really care. And then they, at the end of the trip, they were like, oh my God, KK, you got to come up to the front of the line where everybody was. And they're like, what is this mushroom? And people got really interested in it. And so I just found that my passion was, bleeding and leaking onto their passions. And I just found it really interesting. So decide to have more of an emphasis in mycology. But yeah, I went to school for plant biology, but it's all connected.
Yeah. When you met Paul Stamets, does he still wear that mushroom hat? Did you get one for yourself?
Yeah, no, I actually used to work in a mushroom shop. Honestly, I wore a lot of different hats with that job. And we did have some of those mushroom hats for sale. It's a Amadou mushroom. So they kind of make different mushroom leather with them. And so, yeah, he either wears his black cap or his mushroom hat. It was like 85 degrees during the parade that we did, and he was in like a North Face and a scarf. Like, he just had the Paul look. So.
So you turn to studying mushrooms. What are you looking for, like medicinal compounds? Or are you looking for, I don't know, stuff to help people as a supplement, a dietary supplement? Where's your focus?
What's my focus? Currently, my focus is, kind of treating my own autoimmune disease. So I have rheumatoid arthritis and was diagnosed about 5 years ago. And I was taught all of these different, all mushrooms help lower inflammation as little as a quarter cup of, fresh mushrooms cooked down per week lowers inflammation markers because of the statins in them. But I've been really playing around with different medicinal, harder mushrooms. So that's like reishi, chaga, turkey tail, things like that. So I've been utilizing a lot of different products or, tinctures in a sense. So that would be like different extracts that are higher concentration that you can bring with you everywhere. So I've been kind of utilizing that to really try to lower, inflammation in a sense and focusing on other things that aren't as sexy like sleep and exercise and diet. So yeah, I'm really about the medicinal mushrooms, and so many people still don't even know, the difference between the white button ones that you find at the grocery store and the ones that are culinarily grown. They're grown on different substrates, so they have kind of different properties in a sense.
So, again, what's your role? Are you just doing it to help yourself and reporting about the effects, or are you selling supplements, or like what do you do in the mushroom world?
Yeah, so I currently am the host of Flora Funga Podcast. So I'm all about educating, bridging the gap between plants, fungi, and humans. So that's kind of my main, role right now. I'm a science educator. I love to do in-person interviews and travel around to speak upon things. So I just also did a talk on lichen. So that's a very niche topic. But I also work at farmers markets on the weekends. So I'm partnered with a mushroom farm, and we grow our own like lion's mane, oyster, culinary mushrooms that chefs like to use and sell them at the markets along with different tinctures and things like that. But I'm really about just educating and making people aware of what mushrooms are and how beneficial they are, how diverse they are. So that's kind of my role currently.
What have you found helps you with the rheumatoid arthritis? What kind of mushrooms?
Yeah, so there's harder mushrooms that you don't technically chew on. So those are grown on trees. So that's reishi. Reishi mushroom is a top medicinal one that helps with lowering inflammation, but also helps with a lot of different things. It's the oldest studied mushroom from, centuries. Helps with anti-cancer, detoxing, immune system, arthritis. Like there's a lot of different things with reishi. And then chaga is another top lowering inflammation that's really hard. So you don't really cook with it or chew with it. You soak it in water. You soak it in like an alcohol to make coffees, teas, tinctures, things like that. So those are kind of the top two. And then everybody loves lion's mane right now for the clarity, the focus, helping with memory because it reconnects your nervous systems and your neurons in your brain. So it kind of helps heal some of that. So a lot of people are using lion's mane because it lowers, all the risk of ADHD, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So many different diseases obviously are connected with inflammation. So having those types of mushrooms are good.
Well, what are you finding that's helping you, and how? Specifically, what's helping with your symptoms, keeping it at bay, keeping you feel better?
Yeah, just overall better like body movement. It's not like caffeine. It's not like something that's going to be like, whoa, that's crazy. It's slight changes. But yeah, really like having a better movement, easier movement, better mood overall, helps me sleep better, just like better digestion, honestly. So if people are always talking about the mushroom coffee helping with digestion, lion's mane does that inevitably as well. So you don't always have to have a caffeine source. So yeah, it's little things, but overall I feel a lot better including mushrooms in my daily diet or, weekly diet.
How much do you have to take for, for them to be effective? Like, is it more than a pill or two that someone would take? You have to take like, a whole ounce of powder, or how much is needed?
Yeah, it's usually about, 1 to 2 grams of mushroom. Usually like with tinctures, it's like 1 to 2 milliliters of like an extract. But again, with like just basic lowering inflammation, it's like a 1/4 cup of mushrooms a week. So honestly, it's really not that hard. And that's any type of mushroom, like, the white button ones you get at the grocery store, or oyster, things like that. So it kind of depends on, the powder, tincture, kind of what form you're trying to take it in. But I usually shoot for like around 2 grams for like a top medicinal dose.
Maybe try to, I don't know, make like a large concentrate yourself, see what it would do. Go over like the normally accepted limits and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so if you've had a lot of turkey tail or a lot of reishi or something like that, have you noticed any ill effects or different effects?
No. So the only downside is if you're having like an alcohol-based tincture. So obviously if you're drinking a lot, then you're obviously going to have, more alcohol than you probably should. So I've been actually working with more of the glycerin oil. So my friends at Mycology, they've been doing, alcohol-free ones with ultrasonic. So it's kind of the vibrations to extract the beneficial compounds out of the mushroom. So yeah, playing around with different ones. But yeah, honestly, I have the chance of having all of these different tinctures and, mushroom products that I kind of overdo it, but not really. I just take more of a medicinal dose. But yeah, I just wouldn't recommend, chugging a full 2-month supply of something. That's just could upset your stomach. I had one of my friends sells some of the tinctures, so Desert Alchemist, and this guy decided to like chug multiple of them. And I was just like, that seems so irresponsible. So he just wasn't in a good place. But yeah, I just wouldn't recommend, obviously, chugging a month or 2-month supply in one sitting. Makes sense.
What about some of the traditional mushrooms, which, traditional meaning like you just use them in food, like shiitake or portobello or just the white button? Do they all have medicinal uses, or some are just for eating?
So all mushrooms have medicinal usages just because they help lower inflammation, but some have additional things, like the shiitake you're mentioning is a lot about like heart health, anti-cancer properties, things like that. But it is hard. So mushrooms are about 90% water. So it is harder to get, enough mushrooms to become like a medicinal dose as just the fresh ones. So you could utilize, the powders or dry mushrooms and kind of like blend that up and put it into like a soup or something like that. So that would be a better way of getting the medicinal dose in if you're trying to go with the fresh mushrooms. But again, you should just include mushrooms in your diet anyway, even if it's not like top medicinal dose. It's still going to have the prebiotic fiber. It's still going to help, move, through and have beta-glucans and other things like that you need from the full mushroom.
What about mycelium? Is that ever consumed? Does it have different properties in the fruity body of the mushroom?
Yeah, that's actually a whole conspiracy with like, which one's better, the fruiting body or the mycelium. Honestly, I would utilize both, but most of the time, most of the medicinal aspects is in the fruiting body. But I think in specific mushrooms, the mycelium has, more of specific compounds that people are looking for, like turkey tail, or I think the lion's mane has a specific one in the mycelium as well, but also in the fruiting body. So it really depends what you're trying to get out of it. But I would just go for utilizing both. Like, traditional medicine and peoples have been using the shoots, roots, leaves, berries, like all of that together. They don't really just be like, I'm only having the leaves of this one, when you could utilize the whole thing, because that's really where the magic is at, combining everything together.
What do you mean combining? You mean multiple different kinds of mushrooms together?
Like utilizing like the mycelium and the fruiting body. I think a lot of people are trying not to use the mycelium because some companies are growing it on like rice or grains, and then the companies are using that substrate and putting it into the product and saying there's mushrooms in it, when it's really mainly like the grain that they're using farming or the rice. And so it's a weird, unregulated situation right now in the mushroom space. But yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're reading the ingredients and it says like myceliated grain, then yeah, they could be putting the grain in there. But usually if it's all fruiting body, we'll say fruiting body extract. So kind of read the label, like, with anything really.
Okay. Are there any mushrooms you shouldn't have the first time they fruit? Like, do they need to go through a couple cycles, some of them, in order for them to be edible for the benefit maximum?
Yeah, I guess I would make sure that the mushroom is maybe at a specific growth stage where I guess where it depends if we're talking about the wild types or like the cultivated ones. So if you're grabbing, morels, which is a wild forage product kind of only, you want to make sure that it's old enough to spread its spores so it can like ignite the next generation. You don't really want to pick them too early, but that's just for a sustainable situation. But there's usually different types of cultivated mushrooms that are at peak picking. So that would be with shiitake before the mushroom fully opens, or with oyster when the mushroom fully doesn't flap up open. So it's just kind of based on chef or really based on the picker. I think, regular people that are buying the mushrooms don't really care or really notice the difference. But with specific mushrooms, you can charge more depending on how aged they are. So that's what I like to say about the white button, baby bella, and portobello. Those are all the same type of mushroom, just at different growth stages. So they can charge more for the portobello because they're bigger and, have more surface area and utilize more as food.
Oh, they're the same as the baby bella?
Yes, they're all the same type. Mind blown. So if you've only had those 3 types, you've really only tried one mushroom.
Oh, weird. I mean, has anyone analyzed the chemical composition of portobello versus baby bella to see, maybe they have a totally different nutrient profile at these different stages?
That's a great point. I'm not sure. I would have to look into a study with that. One is way more aged, so the spores are more prevalent. But yeah, it's all the same agaricus species. And the white one, they're just grown in the dark, so that's why it doesn't have as much color to it as well. So mushrooms capture vitamin D if there's sunlight on them.
Oh, wow.
So that's another good, nutrient that people are probably under getting as well. With an autoimmune disease, you also want to have a lot of vitamin D. So most of the time you can only get it from animal products, but you can get some from mushrooms. So that's a good cause for mushrooms as well.
Do you have mushrooms like every day in your foods, or you just have sure stuff?
Yeah, I try to. I don't always have the opportunity to cook. I was just at this, festival for the past week, so I brought my tinctures with because it's really easy. It's a 1 to 2 month supply, and you can kind of just put a dropper full underneath your tongue. You can bring it on a plane. You can kind of do it while driving. But yeah, I would always love to have enough mushrooms that I can cook every day. But I don't always have that opportunity. But I do try to get mushrooms in my system, on the daily or at least like 3 days a week. That's what I would probably recommend.
Yeah. Do you know if mushrooms have a microbiome?
Microbiome. Yeah. Let's
like
see.
bacteria associated with them.
Yeah, definitely. There's actually specific mushrooms like the lobster mushroom that utilizes another fungus or some sort of like other organism that turns it orange. So without it, it would just be a Russula type. And then with this other fungus or bacteria, it actually turns it into another color, another kind of species. So yeah, there is a lot of weird things with mushrooms and science and, exceptions to the rule. Absolutely.
So what do you think the future is, of your work with mushrooms? Where do you want this to go?
I would love to do a spin-off TV series called Nerdy Jobs. So it's kind of like Dirty Jobs, if you know what that show is. But I would just try out different nerdy jobs for a weekend and like educate the youth what they can do with their plant biology degree, mycology degree, environmental science, conservation. I would love to, just educate people and make people aware of what opportunities there are, because I think it's very slim to the younger generation or maybe the older generation of what you can do with this sort of passion. And so I'd love to venture around the world and kind of film something like that. So that's my ideal, option for Flora Funga Podcast. But I would definitely want to continue going to different events and organizations and kind of sharing and educating and be a speaker and just share my knowledge and wisdom that I have since I do interview a lot of different people within this field.
What's some interesting tidbits of info you got from different people? Do you remember?
Yeah, there's so many different, categories. I keep my interviews really broad because I like to attract a lot of different audiences. So there's tons of people with photography, like Alan Rockefeller's, identifying all the psilocybin mushrooms and just taking amazing photos for them and, for different magazines and things like that. And then there's all of this research with creating like resistance against different crops and droughts and using like bacteria and fungi to do so. There's also a lot of different foraging, learning how to truffle forage. So there's just so many different avenues. And then, the plant side, I'm doing an in-person Nerdy Jobs episode on sea beans, which is a sea vegetable that has like high in protein and nutrients. Yeah, so there's just like so many different avenues to go to and GIS, like graphing, learning how to map mushrooms and like utilizing GIS to kind of search for all these mushrooms to find. Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff happening, and I think that's why I really like mycology, just because you're kind of on the epicenter of all of this. There's different species being discovered every day, new research coming out, so it's exciting.
No. So you're just open, you're seeing where it takes you, right? You don't have any like fixed plan?
Yeah, I don't really have too many fixed plans. I definitely go to different mushroom festivals. Like next week, I'll be in Ohio speaking, being kind of like the closing ceremony of that mushroom festival. There's tons of stuff. This fall in Washington, I'll be at Olympic Peninsula Fungi Festival. So that's in the Pacific Northwest, where there's so many different mushrooms, and we collect mushrooms for DNA barcoding and sequencing to map the biodiversity there and try to bring back, native species and, mapping the land in a sense too.
And what about psychoactive mushrooms? Do you deal with them much, or do you stay away, or what's your stance on them?
Good question. A lot of people are really interested in psychedelics now. I think just because it's becoming more legal, all over the U.S. in a sense. Like I was saying before, I was just in Colorado, and they were just allowed to grow mushrooms and just kind of give away fresh psychedelic mushrooms that were at this festival, which I've never seen that before. But no, I think there's a lot of cool research coming out with microdosing, healing ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, like so many different avenues of, what people are really struggling with. So microdosing is a huge topic right now. So I definitely have a lot of people on talking about that. And I think there's like 2,000 or there's a lot of different psychedelic species out there, and then some that are not psilocybin. So there's also like a psychedelic bolete out there, psychedelic lichen. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that we're also just kind of discovering as well in the psychedelic realm.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, have you found it useful to try it, or has it appealing to you or anything?
Yeah, I definitely like utilizing it. I think it really helps people get connected to people around them, just kind of feel that more connectiveness, maybe more down to earth, a little bit, more empathetic to people around them. So yeah, I definitely would recommend people try it if they're in that right headspace. But again, microdosing, you should not feel anything really. You should not be tripping from a microdose. It's more of like a slight alertness, less brain fog, just less stress in all. So that's how people utilize it. Yeah, if you're feeling your microdose, that's not a microdose. That's way too much. I would start with like 0.9 grams, not even a gram, to kind of start off, and then you can build up from there. Keep it down low,
Okay, well, very good. So where can people start to learn about mushrooms? What's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, if you are trying to learn more about mushrooms, you can learn a lot from different textbooks and things, but I always recommend getting out in person. There's usually a Facebook group associated with your like local parks or something like that. So I'm part of the Central Florida Mycological Society. We meet up every month. We meet up at a different park. We get to know, our myco friends around us. We get to go foraging together. There's usually experts there where they can tell you which ones they are. And if not, we can learn from apps called like iNaturalist, where you can take awesome photos, like, 3 different photos of the mushroom, upload it, and my friends or experts are IDing your mushrooms for you, so you really know which ones you're coming across. So yeah, in-person things would be probably the best, just because you get more of that hands-on, one-on-one education. But yeah, there's tons of different, Reddit groups, Facebook groups. You can definitely check out my podcast to learn more about different plant stuff. That's Flora Funga Podcast.com, where I have all of my interviews there. And if you want me to talk about a specific episode, I'm so open and eager to find an expert in that field or speak upon it myself.
Okay, very good. Well, KK, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I recommend people listen to yours.
Thank you.
You cover so many things about mushrooms. And
so
thanks
much
for being here.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
All right, hold on a second.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius Podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius Podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.